Hello everybody, Dram A Day is back with another going slowly towards Project 500. So we are on 368, and this is, as you can see, an actual bottle that I have in my possession, which was acquired relatively recently. Last month I was happily enjoying 2 and a bit weeks in Florida. Enjoying the sights, sounds and smells of Walt Disney World, and as you can imagine, I'm utterly thrilled to be back. But while I was out there, it was at Epcot. It was the Epcot Food and Wine Festival. I managed to catch the very start of that, and they have a festival building there. It's one of the old sort of pavilions, used to be called Wonders of Life, and it's now they use it as a festival centre. We went for a wander to get our free badge and pick up a couple of souvenirs, and I came across this pile of whiskies called Cask Crew. Now, I'd never heard of them. It was completely new to me, so I thought, ooh, I've not seen that one before. I shall get that to put in my suitcase. But we're in Epcot, and it's a whiskey, and it's probably going to be really, really expensive. But if I turn it around, you'll see I've actually kept the price label on there, and you'll see, even for Disney, it's a very, very reasonable $29, which really surprised me. I also got 10% off because I'm an annual pass holder. So all in all, it was, you know, I thought, for buying a whiskey from Epcot, a bit of a bargain. Now, it could be awful. I have absolutely no idea. You'll see it's not even opened yet. So I've done some research on it, and it's a bit of an unusual one. So this is from a company called Lidestri Spirits, who are based in Rochester, New York, and it's actually got on the label that it's produced by them. Now, Lidestri Spirits are a company that specialise in basically private label spirits, predominantly spirits, and it's one of these sort of, looking at the marketing, it's one of these where there's not quite enough information about it. For example, on here it's got, they tell you what the blend of whiskey is, and they give you some information about it, which is quite handy. But on here it actually has, and you might be able to see it if I put it there, crafted by, now it took me a while to actually read the handwriting, but it says Lori Cardio. Now if you put in Cask Crew Lori Cardio, nothing comes up. The caskandcrew.com website talks about it makes no bones about the fact that it's from Lidestri Spirits, but there's a bit about like behind the crew, and essentially the name of Cask Crew is Cask, where the whiskies come from, and Crew, which is the people behind it. But there's no mention of this mystical Lori Cardio. I think is a real person, but they talk about the fact that they're a group of cocktail enthusiasts who wanted to get into brown spirits, and it's all a bit muddy and a bit unclear. But as I say, on the label, they do actually tell you what it is, and it is, you might be able to see it again, it is 51% 3-year-old Canadian rye and 49% barrel-aged American corn whiskey. Now, there is a little mention on the website that it's from Kentucky. They say it's Kentucky corn whiskey, which surprised me because, to be honest, I was expecting it to be probably some kind of corn whiskey from MGP in Indiana, because that really is the kind of the centre of any sorts of whiskey that is an own label or is a sort of mystery blend or something like that. So it's, you know, I'm not 100% certain of what this is going to be like, and it's a bit of an odd blend as well, obviously being a combination of Canadian and whiskey. Now it actually says on the top label, I've just noticed here, that it says it's a rye whiskey blend, and yet we've got American corn here. Now it is 51% rye from Canada, so technically I suppose you could call it a Canadian whiskey. I suppose, I don't know, what would you call it in terms, I mean, it's you know, a blend of authentic rye whiskey, even though it's got corn in it. It's 40%, and interestingly, it's 40% alcohol. Doesn't say anything about proof. Doesn't say 80 proof on here. Surgeon General, bold and spicy rye blended with sweet and smooth corn. That's about it. That's all the information that's on the label there. I have read out to you, basically. And they also do something called, they dub it whiskey, it's whiskey corrected. Now, apparently in cafes in Italy, you can ask for it. I think it's a cafe corrector, and essentially it's a shot of espresso where they've added something to it. And with this Cask Crew blend that I've got, they had 2 other versions as well. One of which was walnut toffee flavoured, and the other one was, I've got it written down, ginger spice. So I was like, no, I'm not having them. I'm not touching them with a barge pole. this is for Project 500, this is going to be the actual whiskey itself. But their whiskey corrected versions is this blend with then ginger spice flavour or walnut toffee. Now, I'm not a great fan of walnuts anyway. I don't like nuts generally, so walnut toffee, not really up my street. Ginger spice, yeah, but to be honest, I'm not a big fan of flavoured whiskies anyway, so that's not for me. But the standard version, we'll see. I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued to see what it's like. You know, it's not got a lot of provenance behind it. But it's an unusual blend. I quite like Canadian whiskey. You know, I like American whiskies generally, so a combination of the two should be quite interesting. But this could be god awful. You know, considering this is $29 and that was in Epcot in the International Food and Wine Festival, you know, you're probably looking at 20 to 25 if you were to find this in retail. Now, I think this launched just in February of this year, 2017, and they are growing the brand. You know, it's a nice bottle, it's a nice shaped bottle, it's pretty hefty as well. You could do some damage with this, and it looks pretty good. So it's got that marketing side of it that is probably going to attract people. Colour wise, it's a pretty healthy sort of dark amber. You know, there's a nice colouring to it. On the nose, it's obviously American whiskey. It's got that rich fruitiness that I always associate with American whiskey. There is a sweetness in there. There's a nice vanilla character to it as well. There's a little bit of spice. It's lacking something. It's lacking some kind of depth, but it's not unpleasant. It's slightly spirity. This is 40%, don't forget as well, but it's got a little bit of a drying edge that would almost suggest it was like 46, something like that. That's probably the spiciness of the Canadian rye. But it's not an unpleasant smell. It's nice. It's lacking a bit of depth. Even on the nose, if you were to describe a finish on the nose, it just dies off quite quickly. Quite sweet initially on the palate. It sits on the tongue and it's quite toffeeous, but it's a weak toffee. Mouth feels a little bit thick. Spice kicks in towards the end of the rye, and there's that slight sourdough element as well, particularly on the finish. It's lingering and I can taste sourdough now, but it does die quite quickly. So it doesn't disappear like that, but it weakens, and then you just get this hint of sourdough. There's a little bit of sharpness on there. I mean, it's no doubt a young whiskey. You know, it says a 3-year-old Canadian rye. It doesn't give you the age of the American corn, but I'm willing to bet that's pretty young, maybe 2 years, if that. It's a little bit, again, as with the nose, it's just lacking depth. It's lacking backbone. Everything's on the front of the tongue. There's no enveloping of your mouth. There's no sort of complexity to it. It's very easy to drink. It might be a little bit too dry for some. The rye element that's in there might be a little bit too overpowering because it dries quite quickly. It starts off very, very silky, a little bit thick. There is a toffee character to it, there is a bit of vanilla, but then the rye dry spiciness kicks in and it's a little bit too overpowering. Having said that, I'm not a massive fan of big, dry, spicy rye whiskies, and this isn't too overpowering to my taste. Because it's a little bit lacking in backbone, the dryness that's there isn't too overpowering in itself overall, but it does feel like it needs something else. And it might be that their thinking is that they need it slightly lighter, so that if you put that walnut toffee or ginger spice flavouring to it, you'll get more of it. I can imagine that actually with flavouring, you're going to definitely get that flavour characteristic, because the base, which is essentially this, the whiskey, is light enough that the flavouring will come through. However, the base whiskey on its own is just lacking something. It's okay, it's not knocking my socks off, but it's not a bad whiskey, it's just a bit of a non-event. It's okay. The sweetness isn't quite cloying, but I can imagine if you get like a large glass worth, it might get a bit cloying because it starts to feel a little bit tacky in my mouth. And I can imagine after a few sips of this, if you're having sort of like a large shot, it's going to start getting a bit, you know, almost like MSG in a Chinese takeaway, that sort of thing, where you start to kind of feel it coating your mouth. And the dryness, the rye doesn't quite kick through enough. So I can imagine this is going to get a bit sickly after a while. In small quantities, to drink without really thinking about it, it's not too bad. For 30 bucks, yes, there is better whiskies, but if you were to put this at the cheaper end, so if you could find this for say $20, because I seriously doubt you're going to find this in the UK anytime soon, but if you were to find this at like 20, 25 is probably about fair, but if you could find this for $20 with the packaging, it's actually not that bad. And if you bought it as a present for somebody that wasn't a major whiskey drinker, that wasn't much of a snob, with the bottle shape, the packaging, it would probably go down all right. People, I think, would try it and go, actually, it's not too bad. It's nothing to write home about, but overall, it's okay. I don't think I'm going to get through the bottle on my own. I think I'm probably going to break it down and send some samples out to share to some people, because it's worth trying, definitely, but it's not worth waiting for, if that makes sense. It is an okay whiskey in my book, but it's not a bad one, so that's no bad thing. And it reminds me of being back in Disney, so it makes me happy and sad at the same time. There you go. 3, 6, 8, done. I shall see you at the next one. Cheers.